Hi guys, so we're going to take notes on this example and then you will be responsible for doing the two problems on the inside of this foldable. So, William drove 150 miles in 12 hours. How many miles did he drive in 6 hours? Let's start by setting up our table of values. Our first variable is our x. It's always our top variable is x, and the bottom one is always our y. X is also our independent variable, and y is also our dependent variable. Well, between miles and hours, which one is independent? Well, it's hours, right? Because how far he goes will depend on how long he drove for. So if we're given that he drives 150 miles in 12 hours, we're given our first relationship. So 12 hours in 150 miles in 12 hours. Let's set up our graph down here. We know again our x represents our hours, so our x-axis is going to also represent our hours. And then our y represents miles, so y-axis is going to represent miles. And then we're asked, find the unit rate. Well, how do I do that? Well, remember, you take your value for y, which is 150 miles, and divide that by your value for x, or your x variable. Yeah, value for x, which is 12 hours. 12 hours, and you divide your numerator by your denominator, so 150 miles divided by 12 hours. When you do that, you get 12.5 miles per hour, or 12.5 miles per 1 hour. 1 hour gives us 12.5 miles. He goes 12.5 miles in 1 hour. That's a slow, slow drive. So now we know those two relationships. And what about if he travels 0 hours? He's going to have moved 0 miles, right? So now we know 3 of our 6 relationships. Then remember, we have to find out how many miles did he drive in 6 hours. Well, in 6 hours, so we have to find that. And then let's find 4 and 10 for fun. The way to find it is by taking your unit rate, 12.5 miles per hour, 12.5 miles per 1 hour, and you can set it up as a proportion. So for 6 hours, how many miles did he travel? Right? Because remember, we have to match our units. Then all you have to do is cross multiply. So 12.5, 12.5 times 6 is equal to 1 times x. 12.5 times 6 gives you 75 is equal to x. So for 6, it's 75 miles. Let's do the same thing for 4 hours. 12.5 miles over 1 hour is equal to x amount of miles per 4 hours. Again, 1 times x is x. 12.5 times 4 is 50. So x is equal to 50. That's kind of confusing that we have x over here, but it's the value for y. But remember, this is just a random letter that I picked. I could have very well picked y to represent our y, value for y. That I just chose to use x. Okay, now the last one, 12.5 miles over 1 hour gives us y miles. Why not use y, right? And then 10 hours. So now go ahead and again cross multiply. 1 times y gives us y, and then 12.5 times 10 gives us 125 miles. 125 miles. So now we filled out our table, and then it says make an equation. But remember, our equation is y is equal to k times x, or y is equal to kx. How do you find your k? Well, you find your k by taking your value for y and dividing it by the value for x. So 150 divided by 12, that should be 12.5. 12.5 divided by 1, well, we know for sure that's 12.5. 0, 0 divided by 0 is 0. But remember, in order for a equation to be a proportional relationship, it has to go through your origin. So it makes sense that it goes through 0, 0. And then 75 divided by 6, again, that's 12.5. And 50 divided by 4, again, 12.5. And 125 divided by 10, 12.5. Just making sure that our k is 12.5, right? So our value for k is 12.5. But we also know that because your unit rate is also your k. Again, your unit rate is your constant of proportionality. So our equation is y is equal to 12.5 times x. This is our equation right over here. Y is equal to 12.5 times x. And now we can take all of our points and plot them on the graph. So let's start with the smallest x value right over here, which is 0. So whenever your x is 0, your y is also 0. So let's plot that 0, 0. But before we go any further, let's go ahead and label our graph. So I'm going to go by each line is going to represent 1 unit. So 1, 2, 4, I'm just skipping 3. So 1, 2, 3, skipping that, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And then again, I'm going to do this side, and on this side, I'm going to go by tens. So each line represents 10 units, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, oh man, it's kind of hard to see, 100, 120, 140, and 150. That's a 4, not a 9. Okay, so now let's start plotting. So now the second lowest is 1. So whenever my x is 1, my y is 12.5. So I'm going to go down 1 unit on the x-axis and then 12.5 on the y-axis. So there's my y, or second point, right over there. And then 4, x is 4, y is 50, 4 and 50 right over there. 6 and 75, 6, 60, 70, halfway is 75. And then 10 and 125. 10 is 100, 20, and halfway is 125. And then the last one, 12 hours, he travels 150 miles right over there. So now let's take our straight line tool and see if this works out. We're going to say, going from over here, and draw a straight line. Uh-oh, I missed something. What did I miss? Let's look at it. So oh no, did it go over all these? Oh no, okay. Let's just fill them back in again. 0, 0, we know for sure goes over there. 10 was 12.5, or sorry, 1 was 12.5. 4 was 50, oh, yep, right over there. 6 was 75, so halfway, perfect, right over here. And then 10, it looks like I might have, oh yes, I did 15 instead of 25. So that was a human error. So look at that. I made a mistake right here, but when we drew in that straight line, I could tell immediately, hey, that was something that I messed up on, right? So perfect. If you draw, or if you calculate all your relationships correctly and you draw a straight line, all of these dots should land exactly on your line. Another way to find your value for y is by taking this equation right here and substituting your value for x into the equation. So y is equal to 12.5. Well, if we were given, remember our x represents our hours, and if we were given like, if we were given 3 hours, how far did he drive in 3 hours? Well, let's figure it out. Y is equal to 12.5 times 3 gives us 37.5, right? Let's go check that real quick. 3 and 37.5, so that's going to be right over here. That's almost on the line. So I think that one counts also. Very close to 40, right? We're all good. And then let's go back to answer our question. How many miles did he travel in 6 hours? Go back to your table. In 6 hours, he travels 75 miles. Again, either use this equation or set up a proportion to figure out your value for y. Good luck.